Okay, so we are now on chapter 12. We finished chapter 10 on adding decimals, chapter 11 on subtracting decimals. So now we are on chapter 12, which is going to be multiplying decimals. And just how we kind of combined 10 and 11, doing adding and subtracting because it was very similar, we're also going to kind of combine 12 and 13, which are multiplying decimals and dividing decimals, because you're just doing the same things but opposite ways. So 12-1 is our lesson for today, and it is going to be on multiplying by powers of 10. Who remembers what a power of 10 is? Pull back into your brain and try to remember that, Naomi. She said it's when there's 10 and a little number on top, like 10 and maybe like a 3 up there. Yeah? Yeah. A power of 10. So this would be 10 to the third power. This is written in exponential form with an exponent. How would you write this in standard form? What is the standard number? What's the standard power of 10 for 10 to the third power? What is that? Do you know, Michaela? 1,000. How did you know that, Michaela?
Because you just did 1 with 3 zeros.
1 with 3 zeros. Does anyone know how, just this isn't even a part of our lesson, but do you remember how to write this in expanded form?
Yes.
Heidi, you want to take a guess?
Don't you do 10 3 times?
Yes, you do. 10 times 10 times 10. So this is kind of way back to the beginning of the year. We learned 10 to the third power is the same as saying 1,000, or 10 times 10 times 10. This is exponential form, standard form, and expanded form. Good. We're going to take that, and this is multiplying decimals by powers of 10. There's a trick. You don't need to actually do multiplication and do all the zeros and do all the calculating. There's a trick to multiplying and dividing decimals by powers of 10. Let's go ahead and look at an example. Let's look at the rule first, right on top here. It says, put that up here. It says to multiply by a power of 10 written in standard form, move the decimal point to the right. So we're multiplying. So we're going to move the decimal point to the right how many times? As many places as there are zeros in the power of 10. So let's look at this example. 125 thousandths times 10. How many spots to the right are we going to move that decimal? 1. Why? Because there's only one zero. So we take that decimal and we move it 1 spot to the right, and we get 1 and 25 hundredths. Is 1 and 25 hundredths bigger than 125 thousandths? Yes. So we know we move the decimal point the right way. Moving the decimal point to the right always makes the number bigger, which is what we want to do because we're multiplying. So all you do when you are multiplying by a power of 10, always move the decimal point to the right. The only thing you need to do is figure out how many places. Well, that's easy. It just says move it the same amount of places as there are zeros. So how many times are you going to move 125 thousandths times 100? 2. 1, 2. Rewrite it with the decimal point there. Now, how come they didn't leave the 0 over here? How come it's not 0, 1, 2.5?
Because it's like an actual number and not like a 10.
Yeah, does this 0 do anything? Does it change the value?
No.
Does it hold the place of something?
Yeah.
No, because there's nothing in front of it. So really, you don't ever need to put a 0 in front of a whole number like that. So here you have 125 thousandths times 1,000. So how many spots will you move the 0 to the right?
3.
1, 2, 3. And then you get 125. Now, they don't have it here, but what would happen if you had 0.125 times 10,000? How many spots are you going to move that decimal over, Mia?
4.
4. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3. Now what do we do? Naomi?
You go ahead and add a 0.
Yeah, you're gonna go one more spot over, so the decimal's gonna go right there, but this is an empty spot here, so you need to add a 0. So 1,250, right? Now if you just copied this, 0, 1, 2, 5, 0, decimal point, right? But you can change this to a more standard way of writing it. You don't need this 0, and you don't need a decimal at the end either. You need to put a comma in. Does that make sense? Change that, what you end up with, to what makes the most sense. Yes?
So how is this going to help us, like in the future?
How is this going to help you? Well, when you multiply things, for instance, when you multiply in metrics, remember how we talked about in science, when you use the metric system, especially if you're going to be involved in any field having heavily to do with math or science, so kind of engineering, especially the medical field, learning how to multiply by a power of 10 or divide by a power of 10 is very important because the entire metric system is based on tens. So you would be doing this actually quite a bit if you're in a pharmaceutical, like dealing with medicines or pharmacy. A lot of that is dealing with metrics. So this is an important skill to know how to multiply or divide by a power of 10. Good question, yes?
So we only like learn it and kind of review it in 5th grade just to like kind of have it in our brain but like kind of forget it, or do we like do a little bit more?
Yeah, you're gonna want to remember this skill. Yep. You're gonna want to remember this. And it's not hard. Again, it's not even computation, it's just remembering, multiplying by a power of 10, move the decimal to the right the same amount of times as the 0. And you should end up with a larger number because you're multiplying. But now, let's look at this. That is how to multiply by a power of 10 when it is written as a standard number. It's even easier to multiply by a power of 10 written as an exponent, because here we're going to move the decimal point to the right how many times? As many places as the exponent. It's kind of like even cheating even more. It tells you how many spots to move the decimal point to the right. Okay, so are you with us? Okay, so we're going to, pay attention, okay. All right, so we're going to take 47 hundredths times 10 to the first power. That means, Zari, how many times are we going to move that decimal point to the right? 1, because this tells us to move it 1 to the right, and we end up with 4.7. And 47 hundredths times 10 to the second power means move it to the right 2 times, 1, 2. And we get 47. Now look, here's what we were talking about. 47 hundredths times 10 to the third power, 1, 2. To go to that third spot, we need to add a 0. And then we've got 470. Write 1 or more zeros to the right of the last digit if there are not enough spaces in the number. Okay, you got that? Think that's pretty? Let me ask you something before we move on to the last section. This is multiplying by a power of 10. I want you to think in your mind, what do you think tomorrow when you do your lesson on dividing by a power of 10? It's going to be the exact same thing except for one switch that you're going to make it dividing instead of multiplying. What do you think will be the difference, Stella?
You take away the zeros?
Kind of, but what if there's no zeros? What would I do to this? What if I'm dividing by 10 to the first power? What do you think I'm gonna do? Ideas, Charlotte?
Move the decimal point to the left.
You're right, because dividing is the opposite of multiplying. So if you're going to divide by 10 to the first power, all you're going to do is take that decimal point and move it to the left 1 spot, which makes it 10 times smaller. Yeah? That's going to be tomorrow's lesson, which will be very easy because you're going to do the exact same as today, but the opposite. So let's go ahead, now that you know that pretty easily, let's do a couple examples, and then we're going to take it one step, a little baby step harder. But let's do some examples and make sure you've got that, and then we're going to go to the last section. So look here. I would like you to do number 4. 752 thousandths times 10. Do it on your whiteboards. Let's see if you can get the right answer. Hold it up when you're done. 752 thousandths times 10.
Can I use one of these?
going to do, put your decimal points really big so I can see them across the room, guys. That way I'll be able to tell where they're at. Yes, Ben, that's correct. Yes, Mia. No, you're just moving the decimal point how many spaces to the right?
You want me to?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Yes and yes.
And this one doesn't work.
Okay, could you throw that out for me and then get a new one? Thank you. Yes, Rocky, that is right. However,
We don't need the 0?
you don't need that 0 or the other 0, right? Yes, that's correct. Heidi, good. Good, Zari, yes. Yes, and Bo, do we need that 0 at the very end? No, we don't need that one, right? Okay, very nice, Stella. Ben, did I get yours?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, did everybody get it right?
Yes.
Anybody struggling? You got yours, Brinkley?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Number 5. I'm sorry, you know what? Let me put this on here for the blended learners that are learning. Okay, we've got times 10, so all we did is move that decimal point one spot to the right, which ends up with 0.752, and we decided we definitely don't need that 0. It's not doing anything, so 7.52. All right, let's go ahead and do number 5. 2 and 29 hundredths times 10 to the second power. Yes, yes, yes. No, try again with that one. Yes, yes, and do we need that 0 or that decimal point? We do not. Good job, no. Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Good job. Okay, this 10 to the second power says move that decimal point. How many spots?
2.
1, 2 spots to the right. So now we end up with 2. We end up with 2, 2, 9 decimal point. And do we need that decimal point? No. It's a whole number. We can get rid of that. 229. All right, let's skip down to something a bit harder because you guys have got the hang of this. Let's do number 13. 598 thousandths times 10 to the 5th power. You've got lots of decimal points. Where are you going to put them? Okay, you're right, Bo, but now put it in the right way for a whole number to be. Where's the comma going to go, and do you have a decimal point? All right, so remember, guys, you need commas and decimal points where they need to go. Yes, Michaela, yes, yes. I can't quite see that. Write it big enough so I can see it. Okay, yep, that's good. So rewrite me your number, Charlotte, without the little loop-de-loops in there. Okay, Ben, close, but not quite. Yes, Mia, that's good. Yes, but you can get rid of that decimal point at the end of a whole number. We don't need that there. So let's get used to writing that. Same, Brinkley, you can get rid of the decimal point at the end because we don't need it to have that. Close, not quite. Close, Stella, but look at the numbers. I think you just rewrote them wrong. Ben, yes, no. I can't quite see that. Could you write it just a little bit bigger from the back of the room? Thank you. Yes, Charlotte. All right, let's look at this. How many times are you going to move the decimal point to the right? 5. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, and we're out of numbers.
Yeah.
So we need to go 4 and 5. I'm going to write it just a little bit bigger so we can see it up here. We are going to move it once, twice, 3 times, but we've got to go 4, 5 times so the decimal point's here. So these 2 spaces both need zeros. So now our number is 0, 5, 9, 8, 0, 0 decimal point. But this isn't how we write a number, right? First of all, that 0 can go away. We don't need a 0 at the front of a whole number. We really don't need a decimal at the end if it's a whole number, right? A decimal is to show places beyond a whole number, but there are none. We can get rid of that. And now we need to put a comma in here. 1, 2, 3, comma. So it should be 59,800. Got it? All right, last one before we take it up just a skosh harder. Okay, let's get hard. Let's do 17.
What does that say?
17 says 725 thousandths times 10 to the 7th power. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. There we go, 17. So right here, this one. Let's do 17. It's a big one. We're moving it. So, no, Ben, how many spots are we going to move it over?
Oh, I thought that was.
Did you not see it? Yeah, I just made it a little bit bigger. Let me figure it out in my brain. Let me see. 1, 2, 3.
I can't see it.
That's a little crazy.
Yes, yes. You didn't move your decimal point though, Stella, right? You added some zeros, but didn't move the decimal point. Charlotte, you're right, but your commas are not in the right spot. Yes, Ben? Can you rewrite yours, Mia, without the loops so I can see? So Stella, where's your decimal point? Where's your commas? Not quite, Brinkley. I think you moved over too many spots. Yes?